Becoming an empty nester. I know that you went through it a little bit years ago, but now you're looking, it's on the horizon now, right? Is there anything that you're looking to do differently, or is there anything that you're excited for?
I'm excited for my husband and I to really become that couple again. When we started our marriage, we started our relationship. He was actually my photographic supervisor for Olin Mills, a family portrait studio. And uh, about 6 months into my employment, we had already been dating a few months, and I became pregnant. And so a year later, we got married. Our daughter was born. She was 6 weeks at our wedding, and that was almost 29 years ago. In October, it'll be 29 years. 30 years together in September, and three children later. And so we never really had that quality couple time that a lot of couples do have before they start having children. And so I think we're really kind of excited about that. Just kind of like just being able to focus on each other when we're in our own domain.
So it seems like you both were parents longer than you were boyfriend and girlfriend.
Absolutely. Yes.
I wonder how, and I'll ask you then, I wonder how that felt knowing that you went from like your identity as, let's say, a single woman, right, into a woman that's in a relationship, and now went to a motherhood, and then you became a wife, or wife then motherhood, right? Like you
Yeah,
transitioned very quickly
I
between those four
did.
things. How did that feel?
It was incredibly scary because I graduated from high school in May of 95. I got pregnant in November, December of 95 and had our daughter in August of 96. So there was a little over a year in between me graduating high school and becoming a mother. And then I became a wife. And so there really wasn't time to be that single girl. There wasn't time to figure out, did I like to go out and party or did I want to be a homebody? Um, but I think that the universe had those plans set into place because that's what I needed at the time.
When you say that you needed that at a time, why do you think that?
Home life. My parents were always fighting with each other, and I just really, for as long as I could remember, wanted to get out on my own and get out of my parents' house and experience life. I can remember at like 13 or 14 years old, I would take my allowance or whatever money I had from babysitting, and I would buy like plates and coffee mugs and salt and pepper shakers and stuff that I needed for my first apartment because my friend and I had talked about getting our first apartment when we graduated school, not even thinking that we weren't even going to be in the same state when we graduated high school because our we were Air Force brats. So we were moving every 3 to 4 years. But I had that plan so early on that I was gonna move out of my parents' house as soon as possible. So it was already set in motion years before I even met my husband.
I remember growing up, and I grew up in a difficult household, and I made a promise to myself whenever I leave, I'm not gonna be one of those kids that comes back.
Yeah.
Right?
I did come back for about 2.5 months in between our first house selling and us finding our second home, which is where we raised our kids for 16 years. But that wasn't because we wanted or needed to come back. We just it was really hard to find month to month houses for a family of five when you knew it was only going to be very temporary. Um, but yeah, I never wanted to go back home.
So let me ask you then, what do you think contributed to you making this situation a successful one for you as well as your spouse and your family that ended up growing with you guys?
I think subconsciously I made um, a realization that I was not going to have the marriage that my parents had. that I was going to do everything as opposite as I could to make it work. We also focused on each other. Growing up, we're told that once you have kids, it's no longer your life. It's all about your kids. And I always knew when I started having kids, I set the belief in myself that one day my kids are going to leave. One day my kids are going to grow up. They're going to find their own spouses. They're going to start their own families. It's what they're supposed to do. And I needed to foster the relationship with my husband because when they leave, he's the one who's going to be there. It's not up to our kids to continue making us happy or continue to make sure that we're okay. It's our job to raise them and let them leave the nest. That's how it works. You have kids, they leave the nest, and you hope that they come back and continue to have you in their life, but really it's not their responsibility to have us in their life. It's a joy for us to be in their life. It's not an expectation. And so very early on, my husband and I decided that we were going to make sure that we did focus on each other. We never neglected the needs of our kids. If our kids needed us, we stopped and we helped them. But when the kids were asleep, if the kids weren't home, if the kids were quiet, we focused our attention on each other. You know, I make this post every once in a while. We have a love seat that we sit on. And I always said that I never want to have separate chairs. I always want to have a love seat because I want to be able to sit close to him. I want to be able to cuddle with him whenever I want without having to ask him, "Do you want to go sit on the couch?" I like having that stabilization of having that closeness together. And we've never had separate chairs.
Sometimes I look back on when I'm buying furniture, and you just mentioned that, I wonder, and to those watching, please excuse my ignorance in this. I wonder if that's really why they call it a love seat, right? It's for
Yeah.
the couples to sit together. Yeah, you love your friends or whatever, right? And your children, you love them too. But it's a
Yeah.
different type of love when it's the person you're in a romantic relationship with. And I like that idea because too many times we allow life to get so busy
Hmm.
that we don't have time for the person we're in a relationship with, whether it's having a conversation with them, just sitting with them, just cuddling with them, saying, hey, let's watch this movie. Who cares if we both fall asleep?
Right.
We're
Yeah.
falling asleep together. Why do you then think people either intentionally or unintentionally neglect their partner in their relationships?
Well, part of it is I think because they're told that they're not told that that's what they're supposed to do, but that's what they're shown how marriage is. They are shown either by their own parents' marriage or by marriages on TV. Now, I grew up watching, Growing Pains and Full House and all that stuff, and but as I saw also how my parents did not reflect what I saw on TV. And then there were also some shows where it did. In the news, you always hear about divorces and child custody and all all these other things. And it's just, you don't hear very often the good news about marriages. You don't hear very often about the marriages that last a long time. And when you do, the first question people ask is, well, how did you do it? They don't ask people who were only married for 10 years, go, well, how did you screw it up? Right? They only ask the people who've been married for 30, 40 years, well, how did you do it? And my husband, bless his heart, he worked 3 jobs so that I could stay home with our kids. So it wasn't like it was an easy road for us to foster this marriage. But there were ground rules that we laid early on. We weren't going to fight in front of the kids. And if we were having a fight, we were going to wait to have a conversation after the kids went to bed. And this wasn't because we didn't want the kids to really see us fighting. I would have rather had the kids see us have conversations and try to work things out. But if it got to the point where we couldn't come to an agreement, it needed to wait because the kids did not need to see the bickering and the yelling and the name calling. And thank God that that rarely happened. I can say probably it happened maybe twice where we had to say, you know what, we need to step away because we cannot resolve this right now. And I'm very proud of that score that it's, twice in over 30 years.
I think that is a fantastic rule to have. And I wish it was like written in stone in the dating annals somewhere, right? Where people
Yeah.
can just say, okay, this is the Bible, this is the Quran, this is the Gita. These are the commandments. Well, there are commandments for marriages, but these are the dating and relationship commandments where it's like you need to follow these things. Because in my 20s, I remember I lived in a part of Toronto, Canada, which would probably be considered lower middle class.
Mhm.
So, and I apologize those who are living in lower middle class these days, but we're talking about back in the day where we actually were poor to be lower middle class.
Right.
These days, you can actually be rich and be
And be
lower
middle
middle class,
class. Yeah.
be middle class, right? So back then in the 1900s, as the young kids used to like, they like to call it, is I used to see couples fist fighting in public, right? And to me, as bad as I would say my childhood was, I never saw my parents fight. Definitely not physically, right? But I couldn't imagine a world where you have, let's say, a 3 year old or a 5 year old in the stroller and you're coming to blows with each other.
Mhm.
I know that you work with people and you have your own experiences. Do you find that relationships maybe in the more modern setting these days tend to not have that boundary, as you mentioned, where if there's an argument, it's whenever, however, wherever it happens.
Um, I think that honestly, I think that the younger generation is more in tune with not having some of those conversations out in public because I think they've seen how and people might hate me for this, but how boomers and some of Generation X have had those blowout conversations in public. I mean, we grew up in the age of talk shows. I mean, Ricky Lake, Jerry Springer, Jenny Jones. We had these talk shows where it was okay to call somebody a name on national television, pull their hair, kick and punch them. Like that was made to be okay, and that was exciting television. And I think now younger generations, they're much more, well, in my world, they seem to be much more subdued and not wanting to have that kind of attention. But that's just my world. Now, I don't watch the news. I don't, that stuff doesn't come across my social media feed. So I may be naive in that assessment. But I haven't seen that in my world. But it could be
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, like I remember, like I think that was a thing of more of our generation or the generation around us. Whereas now, the only time I come across it, I haven't seen it in public, and that's a testament to I'm no longer around those types of people too,
Right,
right? So,
right. Yeah.
right, and that's another thing that I find interesting, and I'll get your input is that the more successful and healthy your relationships, it seems like either organically or by design, you surround yourself with people who have successful and healthy relationships. Do you find that
Oh,
happening to you?
absolutely. You attract what you focus on. So if you're focusing on um convinced that your partner is always cheating on you or always doing things that is not trustworthy, you're going to attract those things into your life. And so, I always tell whenever having conversations with women who are dating and they're concerned about their spouse, I'm like, have you asked them these questions? Have you talked to them? Well, no. Well, how do you know that they don't want to do these things for you? Have you told them that you want them to do things for you? That, I want you to take me out on a date. I want you to, no, because I want him to think of it. I'm like, you can't do that. You can't assume that your spouse knows what you're thinking because we don't speak telepathically. I mean, there have been many times I've sat there and looked at my husband, I'm like, just get off your phone. Look at me. And it doesn't work. You have to tell them, "Hey, I want your attention." Because unless you tell them, they don't know what they don't know. Just like we don't know what we don't know. If our spouse is not coming to us and saying, "Hey, my touch tank is low. I need to cuddle." You're not going to know.
Yeah, I've seen people go from subtle cues, right? Like she may just come and sit beside you and like kind of nudge you, right? And
Hmm.
I think for the most part, most people understand what that means, right?
Yeah,
Or if the man asks you, is like, hey, come watch this with me, like you have an idea, right?
right.
Now, I've seen some people that I've worked with, to your point, right? They're trying to do it telepathically. They'll be in the kitchen somewhere and they'll just look, right? And they're like, he better or she better feel me looking at them to come over here. It's like,
Yeah.
how can they understand that, right? Like, why do you think there's the disconnect between how we communicate in a way that the person can understand us versus how we communicate thinking they should understand what we want because that's how we would understand it?
Because we were never taught that that was a style of communication. You know, I was not in the dating world for very long. I mean, I think I still really started dating when I was like 16. So I was in the dating world for like 2 years before I met my husband. But I've seen like coworkers and my kids dating, and they are not always told you just need to use your words to communicate what you want. Because telling somebody what we want often has that feeling behind it of um I'm being needy. Or if I tell somebody what I want, I'm being demanding. And because that is what has been portrayed in the media. That's what's been portrayed in churches or social media. It's portraying that if you tell people what you want and you tell them what you don't want, like you have boundaries, then boundaries push people away. Well, they do, but they do it for a reason. But you have to use your words and say, "No, yes, I want this. Yes, I want you to tell me that you love me when you leave the house. I want you to sit with me while we have dinner and put your phone down." Right? There's things that you have to speak up and say, "This is what I want." Or, "No, I don't want you to go hang out with the guys tonight. I want you to be home with us and the kids." But it goes both ways. It can't be, relationships are not one-sided. That's why I really do think that there has to be bigger conversations before people get married. This is not a religious thing. This is a relationship thing. This is, you need to be on the same page as far as discipline, kids, vacations. What do you like to do in your free time? Um, and I understand there are people who are going to lie to their potential spouse to get them to marry them. I get that. So sometimes these conversations have red flags and you have to know how to pick out those red flags. There's so much. It can be so overwhelming. But for my husband and I, we did have those conversations before we got married. And had there been any red flags, I think one of us would have said, "I don't think this is going to work." But we've managed to make it work, and it's been pretty wonderful.
And you did it at an age where a lot of people these days, anyways, would say that you were young, but you were very, very young,
I was.
right?
I was. Yeah,
To
and he was 23, so he was still fairly young too.
and I asked and I say that because I think sometimes, at least what I've noticed with some men, is that they will prolong their adolescence, right? So, for example, they'll say that, well, I'm still a child at 22, 25, 30. And it's like, okay, technically at 20, you should be good to go. Right? Like you should have an idea of where your life is. But because they've pushed back their age of majority, at least from an intellectual and an emotional standpoint, now they're 10 years behind where there's people in other parts of the world that they know, okay,
Hmm.
I need to have these types of conversations, or I need to make sure that I prepare myself for it. So when I look at your example, you may not have the quote unquote traditional path to marriage, right?
Right.
But you had a successful journey on that path because that was the path that was presented to the both of you,
Yeah.
right? And you made it work. Whereas some other people, they may look at it and they may look at their own situation and they're not ready for that conversation. And I wonder if it's because they know deep down the answers that they see or hear they may not like.
Right. Right. Absolutely. It absolutely, our relationship absolutely could have gone the other direction because when I found out I was pregnant, that was during, talk show times when, oh, I got pregnant and my husband left me or my boyfriend left me single and, pregnant. There was a lot of those shows going on at the time. And it was incredibly scary because we had only been together for a few months when I found out I was pregnant. But thank goodness he had the upbringing that he did because that makes a huge difference. He was very responsible at 23 years old. I can't say the same for some other guys that I knew at that age. I think it really does come from, how was each other's upbringing? And yes, if you do see those flags that make you go, I don't know if this is going to work, you need to speak up, which can be scary in itself because then what are you going to do? You might feel like you're stuck in a situation and you don't know how to get out of it. If you're already pregnant at 19 years old and you find out that the father of your child does not want to have a child, does not want to have a relationship with you. There are a lot of women who would have pushed all of their beliefs aside and still tried to make it work. And then 10 years later, they end up getting divorced because they really knew at the beginning that it wasn't going to work. But then there are some who, it does work out and you really have to dig deep into your own belief system and really ask yourself, what is it that I want for my life? Whether you're pregnant at 19 or not. What is it that I want for my life? And I knew at 19 I wanted a stable environment for myself. And I found that with my husband. But I found so much more than that. It wasn't just stability, but I found love and compassion and humor and I found the whole package. And I was extremely lucky because I know a lot of people don't get that. But I'm also a strong believer in the law of attraction and what you focus on, you bring about. And I knew for a very long time that I wanted something more than what I grew up in.
I wonder then, for if we take it, your experience and extract it and put it onto other people, could it be then if there's one person who has the foundation and the other person who has the desire that they can overcome this situation versus if it's one person who's dragging someone else along who's fighting it, maybe they can't find the success. Like What do you think it is? What do you think happens when it goes the other way with people, where one person has the foundation, but this other person is resistant to it?
Um, yeah, I think that's when they need to say that this is they don't even need to go into a relationship with each other, right? They need to be able to admit that while they had fun starting the relationship, even if there are children involved, you do not stay together for the children. You do not stay together for the children. I understand that there are, and this is such a bigger conversation because if someone has that foundation, right? Let's say if the male who typically has that foundation and the female does not feel that they want to, that they're being dragged into this relationship now because they're pregnant. She does have resources that she can potentially go to. But there's so many other questions to answer to that. Like maybe he has the foundation, but what is his character like? Is he kind? Is he compassionate? Or is he, a really mean guy? Trying to use my words wisely. You know, there's a whole lot more to it than just can they support? Do they have the whole foundation? At 19 and 23, my husband and I did not have the whole foundation. We just had this we just started to build the house. And we built it brick by brick, and sometimes we ran out of concrete to make the mortar, and sometimes we had to go and get more concrete. We had our ups and downs. But I always told him that we should write a book, we should do a podcast because we started out how a lot of people don't make it, right? You hear of all of these teenage relationships, these high school sweethearts that get pregnant early on and they don't make it for whatever reason. And he says that he goes, I don't know if it was just one thing. I don't know if it was, what it was that made us work so well together. But one thing that we always did was we always in a sense sacrificed for each other. Not at the detriment of losing ourselves, but to the point where he worked 3 jobs so that I could stay home and raise our kids. Or I worked a retail job so that he could go back to school, right? I took care of the home so that he didn't have to worry about it. There were things that I was good at that made his life easier. There were things that he was good at that made my life easier. And we would always bounce stuff off of each other. We talked to each other. We made time for each other. And we made sure that our kids understood that we had date nights, that we wanted to sit next to each other, that we made time for each other. And now our kids are doing that with their significant others. It's what I call generational wealth. It may not be money, but I see the love between my kids and their significant others, and it's something that I help to foster.
And that's why I asked, because I was thinking that was the reason, because it was the effort that was there, right? And it was the communication. And this is something I'm telling you, Tanya, I'm going to say this until I live to be 1,000 years old. You have to talk to the person you're in the relationship with.
Yeah.
And it's strange to me that I knew a guy, and we're not friends anymore, but you know what? It's a mutual thing. We're acquaintances, right? And when he used to discuss his relationship, I would ask him, I was like, why don't you tell this to your partner? Why don't you ask this of your partner? And then he would give his reasons. And I was like, look at it like this. When you're in a relationship, at least to me, and maybe to you as well, the first person you go, the first person you talk to outside of yourself is the person you're in a relationship with,
Yeah.
right? If you're more comfortable talking to acquaintances and strangers, there's something wrong because one of the pillars of a relationship is the communication piece. And as I started to work with more clients, but this was many years ago, once I started to work with more clients, I was surprised how lackluster or outright just missing proper communication is
Hmm.
with. And right. And people will say that, well, we weren't taught. Well, yeah, okay, we weren't taught how to communicate. We know how to speak.
Right.
Hi, how are you? Right.
Right.
But the interaction we have with random people, if you can say hi to someone you don't know, you can say hi to your partner. You can send them a text message, good morning, I'm
Yep.
thinking of you, things like that. And you're right. Like there's people who may have gotten pregnant at your age and it could have gone the other way, right?
Hmm.
But many times when I look at those situations, it's they didn't have the communication piece. Like
Right.
someone gave up very early, right? To work three jobs for this. Like
Yeah.
how many people today would do that in the healthiest of
Yeah.
of
I don't know
situations,
very many at
right?
all.
There you go, right? How many people will say that, okay, I'm going to stay at home while I'm pregnant to take care of this so this person can do that? Do you see I know you're like you work with the energy healing and
Hmm.
self-care. Is there what do you think is missing when it comes to relationships from an individual level as well as a team level?
Again, I think it comes down to communication on both ends. With yourself, like what is it that you want? What is it that you desire? And with your partner. And I will say that if you have a hard time communicating, couples therapy is amazing. My husband and I have never had to have couples therapy because we did have that communication. But if you don't know how to approach things with your partner, having a third party who is not in the relationship, who can see it from a different perspective, can be beneficial. Now, I have also worked with mostly women on the relationship with their spouse on an energetic level. We have addressed energies within them, beliefs, emotions, things that were just stuck in their bodies. And we've managed to we've released them, we've let those energies go, and their relationship with their spouse has gotten so much better. Because when we are connected to somebody, our energies intermingle and they can feel how we're feeling. They may not be able to articulate how they can feel what we're feeling. They might not be able to really understand what they're feeling. But if we have what we call a broadcast message, right? It's like a radio frequency that we send out. It's like a Wi-Fi signal. If we have this energy that says, leave me alone, they're going to leave you alone. They're not going to talk to you. And by clearing out some of those energies, it opens up the space for them to go, "Well, hey, how you doing?" Because you're not telling them to leave you alone anymore on an energetic level. And I know this sounds very woo-woo, but but when we are not feeling our emotions as they're coming in, right? Emotions are energy in motion. They're signals to our body that either it's something we like or we don't like. And when we don't pay attention to those and we stuff them down, they can get stuck. And then as you pile stuff onto them, other people can feel them, right? When you walk into a room, you can feel other people's energy. You can feel your spouse's energy. When my husband's in a bad mood, oh gosh, I can feel it. And I have to take a second and go, okay, wait a minute. Is this really his energy? Or did he bring this home from work? Or is he feeding off of my energy? Because sometimes I have a bad day, but I didn't realize I really had a bad day until he gets home, because then I can feel it. So, through energy work, I've helped couples to regain a healthy relationship because they didn't have all that stuff going on. But talk therapy does the same thing. But you have to be willing to do one or the other.
So what do you then think is the are some of the obstacles that couples face when it's picking up on each other's energy or each other's mood in the relationship?
Oh, that whole telepathy thing, being able to think that your spouse knows what it is that you're thinking about, or even what you're talking about, right? I don't know if other couples do this, but I have like half conversations with my husband. I'll have half the conversation in my head and the other part will come out of my mouth. And typically he's lost. But in my mind, I've had the whole conversation. And so we've learned that if I don't give him the full story, he knows to ask questions, right? But not everybody understands how to do that because they don't they just assume that you don't know what you're talking about, or you're forgetting parts of the story. No, it's because we have the whole conversation. It's just not all out loud.
I'll give you from a male perspective, and maybe your husband has said this. That's such a woman thing, though.
It is.
Right? Like I've been in situations where my girlfriend would tell me something, and I sit there. I was like, okay, now do me a favor. Tell me the first half of that.
Yeah,
Right? Like she'll tell me that she's like, oh, I didn't say that. I was like, no. I was like, you gave me the middle and the result.
right.
Right? I'm like, I don't know how you got there. Give me chapters one through five.
Right, right. But
Right?
yeah, and what's really, this just recently this happened last night. This is so funny. We were watching, oh no, it was this morning. We were watching Behind the Music, and we're watching the one on Huey Lewis in the news. And there was a part where he's talking about tendonitis and the ringing in the ears. And I told my husband, I said, I really wish they didn't put that in the documentary. He goes, put what? I said, the high pitched noise that you hear when your ears are ringing. He goes, I didn't hear it. This is how some conversations go. Your spouse doesn't always hear what you're saying. And this, in my world, has partially to do with the energies that we're feeling from each other. We have this thing called a heart wall, and we build up energies in front of our heart to protect us. And over time, we add emotions on top of emotions on. So it's these bricks that we're just like we're building a house, right? Just it's all these bricks of emotions. And we build this wall. And you can imagine that you're talking to your spouse, and out of your mouth comes these wonderful words. It's like a butterfly, this beautiful, beautiful butterfly. And it's heading right towards your spouse's heart. And all these words are trying to get through this brick wall, but it's having a really hard time because that mortar is really strong. But it does find a little crack, and it starts to wiggle its way into the heart. But by the time it gets through that wall and actually gets to the heart, it might have a broken wing or a broken antenna. And so you telling your spouse, gosh, I'm really glad that you're home. Thank you so much for working so hard for our family. I love everything that you do for us. I really appreciate you. By the time it gets to your spouse's energy, gets to their heart, they hear, thanks, babe, but can you take out the trash? It's not always about what you're saying or how you're saying it, but it's the perception of how they're hearing it. I clearly heard that high pitched noise on the documentary, but my husband didn't. He couldn't perceive it because he couldn't hear it.
So when it comes to that wall in front of our hearts, right, which could be a combination of a number of things, right? Let's
Mhm.
say from our childhood, trauma, whatever the case is. What are the roles of the people in a relationship when it comes to that wall and making sure that we can penetrate it when necessary?
Well, first you have to do your own healing. You cannot rely on your partner, your parents, your friends, doctors. You cannot rely on them to do the healing for you. Um, I guide my clients, but I don't do the healing. My clients do their own healing. And it sounds, for a lot of people, that's going to be like, well, what do they pay you for? Well, it's because I'm guiding them through it. I'm helping them to see and to find what energetic blocks they have so that then they can do the conscious work, which is the setting the boundaries, the journaling, all of that stuff. And so you first have to become your own job. All of the stuff that happens to us, the emotional turmoil we go through, the trauma that we go through, none of it's our fault, but it is our responsibility to heal from it. And until you stop blaming others for what happened to you, you're not going to heal. You have to let that blame go. You have to you have to forgive them for what they didn't know that they were doing. Because 9 times out of 10, they're coming from a place of their own traumas, their own emotional turmoil, and they don't know how to heal from it. So somebody has to break that cycle.
How can someone who is on their healing journey identify within themselves that they're making progress?
Ah, gosh. What they're calling into their energy. If they start to see people that once caused drama in their lives start to disappear, start to stop talking to them, or they start to see them doing their own healing, that's when you can see that you're making progress. When you can think of somebody that you used to blame as causing you harm, and you can think about them and go, you know what? I don't wish them ill will, and I wish them the best. It's not like you're sitting there going, gosh, I wish we were friends now. I want to hug. I want to be friends with them. I want to go out on coffee dates. It's That's not sitting in neutrality with people who have hurt you in the past. Sitting in neutrality is saying, I don't wish you any ill will. If I had to see you at a family reunion or a picnic, I can be cordial to you. Doesn't mean you have to be friends, doesn't mean you have to hang out. It just means that you can be cordial. You can be acquaintances and say hi on occasion and leave it at that, which it
There
can
are
be extremely hard.
It is because there's a friend of mine. He has a group of male friends, and let's say there's about five of them, and four of them, and they were all single at the same around the same time, right? But four of them are chronically single, right? They're going
Mhm.
date here, casual date, whatever, but they haven't been able to maintain a relationship. When he got into a relationship and it was getting very serious very quickly, like a lot of healthy relationships do,
Right.
right? Like you know the person, your energy matches, you're like, okay, you've had that conversation. As he began to progress within this relationship with this woman and things were going very well, he noticed that his friends, and this is how he shared it to me, would start to try to make jokes about it. It's like, oh, you won't be able to come out anymore, or you know what, you're married, you're under lock and key, all this stuff that
Yep.
men say to
Yeah.
men, right?
Yep.
And I told him that there's an interesting thing about humor. And he's like, what, Terrain? I was like, some people use humor to lighten up a situation, right? Make light of it, not that serious, not that heavy, like at a funeral, whatever the
Right.
case is, right? And then there's a group of people that really a lot of people don't talk about is that some people use it to mask their true feelings,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Either they don't like what you're doing, there's jealousy, there's envy, there's dislike, whatever the case
Yep.
is, right?
Yep.
And the thing is, do you know how, and I asked him, do you know how to identify these people in general? He's like, what? I was like, anytime they say something as a joke and it gets either the reaction they don't want or there's some feedback that is constructive to it, they throw their hands up, oh, that was just a joke.
Yep.
Right,
Absolutely. Yes.
because now they don't have to take responsibility or accountability for it. I was like, pay attention to those people because you won't ever go watch a comedian who make a joke about some very serious topics going on in the world, right? And then at the end of this session, they put up their hand. Hey, everyone, that's just a joke. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Right? Because it
Yep.
comes across clearly as a joke. And the reason why I share that is I always wonder when someone, as you put it, right, they're the ones who's doing the work and they're trying to understand what is going on with themselves. How much do you, for you now, how much do you think the background noise of their friends or families who are struggling and can't make it work has an impact on them and their progression in healthy relationships?
It impacts it a lot because we need that validation that what we're doing is working. And if our friends and family come to us and start joking about what it is that we're getting into, you know, when I started getting into energy healing, um, my mom thought I was going into a cult. Um,
Or possession, probably.
yes, and my mom is one of those people who would make jokes, and when you called her out on it, it's joke. It was just a joke. Can't we just have a laugh? And it was at that point where I had to say, no, mm-mm, no more, no more jokes at my expense. um, and I had to set up those boundaries and say, look, if you're going to treat me like this, then I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to respond to you. And she did start to fall away, and now we have a very superficial couple of months we talk, and it's there's no closeness there. It's not a parent-child relationship anymore. It's acquaintances. But that's what's safe also for my mental health is to not have that in my awareness, have that in my life. Because it was affecting my kids. And so when those people come in and they start to it's like they start to throw those rubber daggers, right? They're meant to be knives, but because they're supposed to be funny, they're just rubber daggers and they think they're just going to bounce off. Well, people start throwing those rubber daggers because they are jealous, because they do envy what it is that you are having. And they are not your real friends. They are not your real family. That there's that term, um, blood is thicker than water. Well, it's the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Just because your family and childhood friends have been around you your entire life doesn't mean that they are good for you when you find happiness.
And I can see that being difficult, not only for yourself and your situation, but for maybe many others, because you'll have to make that choice. And that's something that I went through. And I look back now, the last couple of years, let's say since COVID, right? And then I look before that, and it's like night and day. And one of the reasons why I say it's night and day is I knew the people that was in my life predominantly in 2016, 17. I had an idea that they weren't the best,
Hmm.
but I was comfortable,
Yeah.
right? Once I began to find success, not only within myself, but in the type of relationship I wanted to obtain and create, then I saw the distance because I wasn't, and it goes back to that old joke, right? I wasn't one of them, one
Right.
of us,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I was someone totally different. But then when I look at some people who struggle with that and they say that, okay, this is really good, but this 5 years, 10 years,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can give this up. So instead of giving up what isn't serving them in the way that they want to be served, they get rid of this, which has all the potential to be everything that they want to be.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Why do you think people have that struggle leaving the old for something that is potentially so much better?
It's really funny because the last year I have been going through this kind of myself with some friends of mine. Um, and I didn't want to give up those friendships because I had had them for so long. Um, but what I ended up what I think what we have to do sometimes is we have to look to see, can we, is there enough room for both? Is there enough room to have the life that I desire and still maintain some of this relationship? Relationships change. People change as we get older. When I first moved into the neighborhood we live in, this was the neighborhood that I met my two best friends in. And now, as of last year, we were all back together in the neighborhood. In my mind, we were going to be the Golden Girls. We were going to be at each other's houses all the time, hang out, have a good time. It is nothing like what I imagined. And I had to come to terms with the fact that, and my husband helped me see this because I talked to him about everything, that I wanted the relationship that we had when we were 16. That's not the relationship that we can have at 48, 49 years old because we are not who we were at 16. But in my mind, that's what I wanted. And so I really had to look at our relationship and go, can I be this healed version of me? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't stay up late, and still have this relationship over here where they are drinking, they are smoking, they are staying up late. And I think it's finally starting to get to the point where I have done enough healing around our friendships that I can have the healed version of me and I can still maintain these friendships just on a different level.
I think that's very wise, right?
Thank you.
Because you want to be, this is this is it.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
This is it. And then I'll ask you, who whose responsibility then do you think it is to make the components fit, or do you think that those from your past or a person's past should be able to adjust to the new version of that person?
Um, we are the center of our own universe all of the time. I think it's our responsibility to adjust to to what's going to flow in our lives. Um, because our reality is so different than somebody else's reality within the same relationship. I think that you can have those conversations with each other, but you can't put the blame. I don't think you can put the blame on the other person because they don't see it from your perspective. And I know that sounds like, oh, well, I'm taking all the blame for all the relationships that I've ever had. And you're right, I am. I take 100% responsibility for how my relationships have turned out, good or bad. And I tell you what, when I told my mom, because my mom asked me, she asked me point blank, what do you think what is your percentage of responsibility for the downfall of our relationship? And I said I take 100% responsibility because it's my life. I can't I can't force somebody to be in a relationship with me. Friend, sibling, extended family, Bob at the grocery store. I can't force anybody to be in a relationship with me. If they don't want to have a relationship with me, it's okay. It might hurt. I'm still human, but I'm not going to beg them to be in my life. I'm too young for that. I got too many more years to enjoy to worry about whether somebody wants me in their life or not. And that's really been a realization that I've had over the last probably 2 months because I'm still growing. I'm still healing. I'm still um, learning to be the version of me that I desire. And some people may think, well, why are you not happy with who you are now? And it's like, because I'm still have body pain, or I still don't sleep well, depends on the day. But we're here to learn from this human experience, and I want to experience being human. But I'm not going to expect somebody else to give me that experience. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And the way you said it, it was so similar to the way I told my girlfriend. I remember I told her this was just a few weeks back. And I said that anything that has happened to me, whether if I had to change friends, exes, whatever, job, I was like, I'm 100% responsible. She's
Hmm.
like, really? 100%? I was like, yeah. She's like, I was asked her, do you know why? She's like, no. She's like, there must be people who's their fault. I was like, it's no one else's fault but my own. And the
Right.
reason is I have all the power when I'm 100% responsible for it. So if a friendship ends, a relationship ends, a job change, family member doesn't speak to me, whatever the case is, it's all on me. And the minute I said that it's all on me, I have the power to take responsibility and I have the power to change it. And I gave her the example. It's like when someone is in a codependent relationship, right? Whether friendship or romantic relationship, right? Instead of to use your words, they're not the center of their own universe. They've made someone else the center of
Right.
their universe,
Right.
right? So now that person has control and dominion over them, meaning
Yep.
that if they're upset, you're going to be upset just by
Yep.
proximity, right?
Yeah.
If they need something, and I've seen it, and maybe you've seen it, where someone who is so dependent on someone else, they're like, oh, I need $500. And you don't have it. They're like, oh, you're the worst friend ever. How can you not give me $500? Now you feel bad,
Hmm.
right? Because you're not able to cater to this person who should be able to take care of themselves, right? So I'm glad that you said that because I think sometimes or many times it's easier to say that it's this person's fault.
Oh,
I'm just
yeah.
gonna sit here in my filth like a pig, right? It's this person's fault,
Yep.
right? Do you see people staying longer in the victim mentality than they should?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think everybody should run to the bookstore right now and purchase the four agreements and read it at least at least once a year, just to refresh your memories. Um, because that is one way to help get yourself out of victim mode. Because I mean, not to bring politics into it, but look at the state of our world right now. Who are we blaming? We're blaming the politicians. Well, you can't just blame them. You have to take responsibility for your part in it. You have to take full responsibility for your life. And right now, there is a lot of victimhood going on in our world and not taking responsibility. You see it all over social media all the time. I'm fat because of this, or I'm I have anxiety because of this, or I mean, for the longest time, I blamed my mom for my depression because she was bipolar and depression is inherited. So I blamed my parents. It's their fault I was sad. It's their fault that I had panic attacks. It was always my kids' fault that I was tired, or it was my job's fault that I couldn't afford my bills. It- you know, we blame everybody for everything, but I would love to see that group of people that I mean, even now, sometimes I do victim blame because it does it's easy. Sometimes it does make you feel good to blame other people. But when you stop and really look at your situation, you only have yourself to blame. Did you make the appointment that you needed? Did you make sure that you got all your oil changed in your car on time? Have you checked the pressure of your tires to make sure you didn't get a flat tire? We're responsible for all of that. But it's really hard for people to take accountability, even myself.
It is absolutely scary, especially when the person who doesn't want to take accountability is so vocal and loud
Yeah. Yeah.
about it, right?
Yep.
Like it's like they'll come. I remember there was someone in, yes, it was in actually one of my classes for school, and she was so loud. Like every day there's something else. Oh, I couldn't do my assignment because when I was trying to take the bus, it made me late. And we're sitting there like, well, you had like all week. Like, do you live on the bus? Is it right? Is it just driving you out of town and just keeping you on the bus until the day of the assignment is due? Right? It's absolutely
Yeah.
scary, but I get it, right? Because it's that old blanket,
Yeah.
right? It's very nice, it's very comfortable. It's
Yeah.
damaged. You should have replaced it, but
Yep.
you know what? It's
Yep.
so you're so attached to it. So when it comes to stepping out of that victim mentality, what are maybe some of the changes that people can expect to see once they leave it behind and they start to understand the power that they truly have within themselves?
You start to see your life flowing in a much easier direction. You're no longer on the rapids of the river, but you're now kind of trickling down the stream. When you stop and look at yourself, really look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what am I taking responsibility for? And I would challenge to people to even make a list each day. Like what am I taking responsibility for myself today? And then at the end of the day, make another list and go, who did I blame for what happened to me today? And then shift that blaming column and take responsibility for what happened that you're blaming somebody for. Because when I did that and I realized that I was blaming my parents for all this stuff, blaming my kids for all this stuff, blaming my boss, my job for all this other stuff. I realized that I really wasn't taking responsibility for myself at all. I mean, I showered, I put makeup on, I got dressed, I went to work, but ultimately, if something bad happened at work, oh, it was because we got too many phone calls. It was because I don't know, internet went out. It was never my preparation or my lack of preparation. So really look at your list of blaming and why are you blaming these people? And don't blame yourself. This isn't a blame game. Don't go blaming yourself for these things either. But look at it and say, how can I fix this so that I can flow easier through life? And you'll find that the opportunities that you need to help your life flow more easily will start to come in. But then that's a whole nother conversation because now you have to take action on all this stuff that's coming in. So this human experience is work. This is your first job. We all have two jobs. We have our first job as being human. Our second job is whatever we do to make money. But first, you have to be human. You have to figure out this human experience. And if you have questions and you're having a hard time figuring it out, find someone and ask them. Ask them, what did you do in this situation? Or what would you do in this? Ask for advice. And if you don't like their advice, question why don't you like their advice? Is it because it makes you have to take responsibility? Or is it because they're asking you to drink the purple Kool-Aid? You know?
So as we close, I want to give you three wishes because this is the way I love to close all my interviews. So there's three things that you can wish that people knew. So the question is, when it comes to creating a successful relationship or marriage, what are three things you wish people knew and why?
Mm. Communication. Learn to ask for what you want and learn to speak up for what you don't want. Sacrifice. allow yourself to sacrifice your needs some of the time, not all of the time, because some of the time you do have to be there for other people before you can be there for yourself. It's just going to happen. And the third one would be to find a way to laugh unconditionally. Just find a way to have fun and not laugh at other people's expense.